If you've watched any of my videos, you know I stay with something, even when it's extremely painful. Now, this Huff and Puff stuff, uh, you can get all the schematics you want. Okay, I can show you. I collected the schematics, and you look them over, and you're trying to figure out how the thing works, and then little by little, you climb up that steep curve, the learning curve, and you realize that the original Huff and Puff designs only do one band. Like say they'll do 3.5 megacycles to 4, or in this case, a lot of these are done for the 5 megahertz band for Europe. Okay, so a lot of the guys in the design of the Huff and Puff VFO stabilizers are for the 5 megacycle band. So I wanted to have an oscillator that stayed locked through a wider range of frequencies without using the DDS or any of those modern noise makers. And I start looking, and I'm thinking someone must have gone down this road before. And I contacted a couple people, and if some of them answer you, some of them don't. And I ask such simple questions, but they don't. I guess they don't see that. They don't see the question, and they don't want to answer it. But process elimination, I realized that all the early Huff and Puff stuff does just one little frequency area, band. Okay, so you think it's going to stabilize your VFO, but it's only for ham bands. So you got a shortwave radio, and you want to have it stay on frequency and not drift. And it's only you're gonna have to you basically set one of these things up for like 80 meters or 40 meters or whatever the hell that 5 megacycle band was. So I stayed with it, and it became extremely painful. I built the one circuit because I only had one chip, and I didn't realize it was only going to do a tiny little frequency band. Here it is here. And then after I built it, I contacted the guy, and he said it really doesn't work that well. So I didn't give up. I started. I went on to this one of his new units, designs, and then I asked him. I saw a toroid coil down here at 15 turns, so I know that's higher in frequency than 3 megacycles. So I asked him what the frequency was as a circuit, and he didn't answer me. The frequency and the range. Okay, so I'm sitting there, and I just know to just keep digging. And I found a name like Peter Lawton, okay, almost like Peter Lawford. See, I have a dyslexia. Every time I kept keying this in, I kept keying in Peter Lawford. The amount of frustration I went through on this, just to see, could it be done? I wanted to be certain it could be done because I don't want to put too much time in on it, because this is a circuit that's supposed to keep me busy. It's not supposed to make me crazy. I've gone past that. I know designing this circuit is going back in time. It's not needed. It's only needed for me. I just want to build a certain type of radio. Well, anyway, I stayed with it, and I bumped into something on the internet, and it was in one of these places where they take a text or a PDF and they put it like in a mechanical or into a page, in a web page, and they get you to click on it. There's all ads around it, and you can read this PDF, but as you're reading it, there's all these ads popping up, and it's very tricky to download it. And I was able to download it. Now, it's very this Huff and Puff stuff, this stabilizer stuff. It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. You have to spend several days just to get a handle on what the hell you're even looking at. You know, a lot of the circuits are for 5 megacycles. Okay, that's because these are European guys that were designing this stuff originally. This guy, Klaus. Okay, and I won't even try to pronounce his last name. And then Peter Lawton. And then, what's the other guy's name? Summers. Okay, Hans Summers. Okay, and then finally, the light comes on. I find this PDF, and it's locked in a web page, and I was able to download it. And then the Enigma or the mystery wrapped in the Enigma got even wackier. So I found this, an all band Huff and Puff oscillator. And look at this font. No name, okay? But at the very bottom of this PDF, this is what you see. Just sitting there. See that? That's a ham call. And it's not the United States. Ours, I think, are all W's in the front of it. So I key this in, and I'm going around and around and around because I now have this. And this is a complete documentation, PDF, of what this guy went through, understanding Huff and Puff oscillators and getting it to work across a wide amount of frequencies. Okay? And he came to all the conclusions I came to. So as I'm reading this, it's like God finally says to you, "You've suffered enough, my son. Here it is." Okay? So I found this and I went through it. And like I said, his call is ON1MWS. Okay. Now, you know as much as I know now. You just read this and you'll be where I am. Okay? Now, I want to tell you, I put this in and I went looking and I found a conference and someone mentions this guy's call. And they say, you know, this guy's got a website, but none of the search engines find it. And I'm like, now my radar's up, you know. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. So he puts in his message, the guy. So I click on it and I see this, all the things this guy built. And he has the same kind of attitude I have. Like, I built this, I'm tired of this. But then he gets back into it again, you know. And what he found was you want to do the fast Huff and Puff circuit. And you'll know that it's fast and it's what you want. I have it here. Okay. What the difference between the first two of Summers and this one is, look for a shift register. Okay? A shift register, the way it works, can do a wider range of frequencies versus a flip-flop. And you got to get this, you have to get this guy here. This an all band Huff and Puff oscillator, and that's what the page looks like. He's got a block diagram at the top. His drawings are very crude, but guess what? It's there. Okay, and I now know that this one here is a very narrow band. And I asked the author; he didn't get back to me. But in other words, they're using an LED as a varactor, and you're talking picofarads. So the amount of change that this oscillator is going to take using that LED is going to be one little band. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to insert a wideband oscillator setup into this circuit. And this other guy shows how to do that. He even shows you his oscillator, how he built it, how the conclusions of how he came to it. Because I'm going to use a Franklin oscillator. I believe he did too. A Franklin oscillator is very accurate to start with, which will make an even better stabilized oscillator. And like, once again, I have those eBay DDSs, and there are other DDSs, synthesizers, and I don't want that. I want something that's in between an oscillator, like a Franklin that drifts a little, and a DDS. I just want to go to the next step. I want an oscillator that doesn't drift. I don't want dual VFOs. I don't want a bunch of offsets. The offsets can be done with the frequency counter. Okay? But I specifically wanted a certain reason why I was getting into this circuit. And I know why. It's psychological. I want to reproduce a modern version of my 1937 Philco radio that I had as a kid. One knob tuning. Outer part of the knob is fast. Inner part of the knob is veneer. It's not really a real veneer. But anyway, yeah, so I found this, and this basically had all the answers in there. Okay, diagrams, why he did it, what he went through. This is the Holy Grail. Okay, and I'm telling you that because if you're into Huff and Puffs, and you start reading around, you're going to go around in damn circles, okay? And like I said, I contacted one guy, and he was helpful, you know. But basically, when he did the circuit, it was a few years ago, and he never built it to do a wide band. He said it could be done. And then this other guy went through the headaches of it. I'll cut to the chase. As you go up in frequency, now you got to remember, you're going to have to understand the circuit. But as you go up in frequency, the amount of capacitor that compensates, it's a variac. On the feedback path, there's a variac, and that keeps touching up the oscillators to keep it on frequency. Well, as you go up in frequency, you need less capacitance. As you go lower in frequency, you need more capacitance change from the loop circuit. Okay, and this guy explains it, so I don't have to really explain it. This guy did it. He did the job, and this is what I tell you: if you're willing to dig on the internet, you will find your answer. Okay, but you got to dig. You can't be lazy. And I go and ask people questions, hoping that they'll cut my journey shorter. Okay, and I stay with stuff. And I'm building. I have ordered more parts. Now I want to go off on a little bit of a tangent, and I'm going to say, China on label, shit on the table. Okay, now I bought. It's amazing how they make stuff, and it's an almost. Okay, this is the back end that plugs into the scope. Here's the probe. When you put this tip on here, notice it's spring loaded. Okay, the tip does not make contact with this hook. How they manage to do that? When you take this off and touch that tip, it works. You put this on, it does not work. Okay, on two of them. How they manage? How did? I don't know what's gripping this to hold it on, but this tip does not touch this gripper, and it drove me nuts. Now, more China on label shit on the table. There was a guy that did a complete video on these things, and these are solderless proto boards. Now, this thing is not as good as a 45-year-old Continental Specialties. These aren't even worn out. I've used these hundreds of times. I have this one down here, and I have a large size. And I bought these to make my life easier. They're shit. Okay? The guy on the video was showing you. Here's a wire here. Is it stripped? He pulled one of these, and he says, you go along here, and all of a sudden you'll find ones, and they're out here, they don't even grip. Now, today this is gripping, so these might actually change with temperature. Okay, that's too loose. Okay? Now, when you use the old one, you feel more resistance. Okay, well, I put some ICs in this one, and the pins weren't making contact. So I got this one out. Is it still around here? This is the same shit. China on label. It's a Radio Shack. When you put resistors in here and diodes, it all works. You put an IC in. Go ahead, fall over. I don't care. When you put the ICs in here, they don't make contact with the pins. Some of the pins. Intermittent. It drove me nuts. See, I'm in the middle of this rabbit hole, and I'm down in the basement. And down in the bottom of the basement, over on the side, I found a parchment written by someone that basically stayed with it. And the light went on for me. Everything he said, I had already experienced. Okay? And like I said, as you slowly, if you read up on something over a period of days, you keep running it through your head, you start to realize, wait a minute, why don't any of these circuits have any frequency ranges on it? Okay, they want to show off that they built something, but they're not going to give you any real information to help you out. That's why it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma. And then some of these guys can't answer some of your questions. All right, so basically, I always tell people, keep reading. Read as much as you can. And I go back and I use it. I go through it. And like I said, I found that it's now dropped off to the side. I found that the thing I showed you. And that's the one you're going to get. If you really want to get into Huff and Puff, you got to look for the circuit that has a shift register. And that one there is going to do a wider range of frequencies. It's also going to do a band, a ham band, nicer than the other ones. The other ones might kick out or drop on you, But look for the one with the shift register, and you're going to have to buy some of the parts, okay? But like I said, get that text. You know, how to make an all band, whatever it was, Huff and Puff. And it was fun reading the guy, and then he kept pushing it further. And that's the stuff I do. I make myself crazy. That's why when I have people contact me with their stupid nonsense, I go ballistic. Because I know the person hasn't done any work at all on the thing. Okay? They haven't done any reading. They're shooting from hip. They want to impress me. They're not impressing me. They're just showing me how stupid they are. Now, I flash back to when I was in school, and the teacher's asking you this question, and you have no idea what the hell you're doing, and you're trying to worm your way out of it, and the teacher knows. There's no way to worm because basically they're smarter than you are, or they have more knowledge at that point than you have. But I told you the story about I worked with this one guy. He was a pain in the ass, okay? But he observed, and he remembered. And we were sitting at the cafeteria table, and the guy says, I just got this used car. But it only drives for 15 minutes, and then it'll crank, but it won't start. So this guy, you see the look on this guy's face. He goes, we'll go out there at break time, the next break. So we go out at break time, and he says to the guy, run the car. And the guy runs the car, and it's running perfectly, like a top. Not one cylinder misfiring. The body of the car is in great shape. But the person that sold it to him said basically none of the mechanics could find the problem. So anyway, this guy has him run the car, and the car cuts out. So he tells him to shut it off. He goes, come here. So he takes him over to the gas tank, and he opens the hatch, and he says, listen. And he turns the cap, and he goes, he says, what you need is the correct cap for this car. Someone went in the gas station with the car, and then lost the cap, and then bought a new cap and put the wrong one on. Or the guy at the gas station did that. He was doing two cars at once, and he reversed the filler caps, the gas cap, and that's what's wrong with that car. So it was like freaking magic. But this guy had the problem with someone else's car, and then he stayed with it to find it, or someone that stayed with it told him. Now, I'm that kind of person. I'm in the hardware store. A guy comes in. He tells the story about he got a brand new car. Everything's fine for weeks. He can't find the keys for his car. So he grabs his wife's keys, and he takes the car, and it will only go like a block and a half at a time. And he finally couldn't go where he was supposed to be going. He takes it to the dealer. The dealer calls up. They have the car 3 days. They can't figure out what's wrong with the car. And he's telling me this story. I said, look, if you can, when they do find the problem, could you come back here and tell us? So he goes off. A few days later, he comes back and he goes, you won't believe what it is. I said, oh, no, I'll believe what it is. He says it had to do with the key. I go, really? I go, yeah. And I'm thinking like it can detect the husband from the wife. No. What happened was when he got the car, he got two keys. He gave her a key and himself a key. And everything was fine. But one day he couldn't find his keys. He grabbed her keys. Her key was not an actual key for the car. It was called a valet key. It only allows someone to park the car and then give you the keys back or hang it back up. And then when you come back out, they give you the key back. And that's to prevent the guy that parks your car from using your car that night when you're if you're at a dance or a party. And it's called a valet key. And that was the trick. And that's in my head now. Okay? It's like this one big Chevy car. After so many years, the cigarette lighters would break apart inside, and they would short out the socket that the cigarette lighter's in, and you'd go over a bump, and the fuse would blow in the car, and you'd lose something else. I don't know what the other thing was that the guy would lose. And he says, I'm driving along, and he says it happened the night he says I had people in the back seat that I took, and that's the night it started doing it. Well, anyway, I went through it. I made a device that when you slam the car door, the fuse would blow. So I made a device that you put in the fuse. They had those new type of fuses. It was a unit, it had two wires on the fuse that was open, and you plug it in, had a light bulb on it, a very quick response light bulb. So if we slammed the car door, the light would flicker. And then we kept pounding and clicking and bumping, and it turned out to be a cigarette lighter in the back of the front seat in the middle, in the back, had a cigarette lighter for the back seat, and also ones on right or left. This car had 6 cigarette lighters in it. Okay, well, anyway, so I start tapping with my hand, and we could see the light flickering, and I closed in on it, and I took the cigarette lighter out, and my friend kept saying, I told you, it happened the night of the party. That guy went to light a cigarette, and what happened was when he took the cigarette lighter out, it broke apart, and what he did was he just stuck the pieces back in there. So it would touch and short out and blow the fuse. So I'm telling the guy this story, and he had the same problem, same kind of car. He went right out there, and he brought in the cigarette lighters. He pulled them out of the car, he brought them in, and he laid them on the table, and 2 of them were broken. But that's the stuff. When you find that someone else stayed with something, and they fixed it, and they figured out why, and how come, and what to watch out for, and the information over here, and don't use this, and don't forget to do that. That's what I found. I found the holy grail of Huff and Puff stabilizers. Okay, I have several pages the guy did, and that shows me all the stuff he went through. So now when I go through it, I won't have to go through it, and I know the cut to the chase. Now I basically have the circuit set up here now without the shift register. I'm waiting on the shift register. I'll get it to lock here. He also made sure that he said, make sure you put some of the circuits, each one of the circuits basically has to be on its own 5-volt supply. So you're going to need a resistor and a Zener diode and a capacitor. And you don't want the chips to the signals to go through ground or through the hot and get into the other circuit. That's why you do bypasses it would be the positive of the chip. You want to have bypass. Now, this chip has a bypass cap across it. This one, I didn't put it on yet. But in other words, just wiring the circuit up, it might not work because the signal from one chip is getting into the other circuit through the positive because it's such a high frequency. Okay, it's RF. And you want to squelch the RF at the positive level. There's so many things that even when you build something correctly could still be wrong because you don't know. And I think that's it. This was the holy grail. I'm telling you right now, you find that reprint and see what that guy threw. All right, that's it.